Hello ladies, and welcome back to the Modern Goddess channel. As you can see from the title of this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 levels of femininity. And this is a lesson that I have given several times in my group sessions. So for many of you, this is going to be like a fresh recap. For the rest of you, this is probably going to be new information. So I suggest you grab a pen or a pad to take some notes, because I think it's really important for us as women to know these 5 levels of femininity, not because I want anyone to feel superior to or inferior to other women. I just think that it's important for you to recognize which situations are going to bring out different energies within you, or what type of habits or what type of lifestyles or routines might bring out different energies within you. And so when you're able to recognize where you're functioning from, for the most part in your own life, in your own relationship, and at work or whatever, then you're able to make the necessary adjustments. And so I'll give some suggestions also on what you can do to elevate from the level that you're currently in, depending on which level you're currently in. I actually did a video about the 5 levels of masculinity like a couple years ago on this channel, so it's on here somewhere. I'll tag it if those of you that haven't seen it would like to watch that, but this one is for us. So this is going to be a pretty lengthy video. I'm probably going to take an intermission at some point, but making sure you grab you a cup of water or something, because this is a lot of information and I really think that it's valuable information. So let's go ahead and get started. So when you think of the 5 levels of femininity, I want you to think of it as a pyramid. Think of it as a hierarchy, right? At the very bottom of that pyramid is going to be lack of feminine. That means overly masculine. If you are an overly masculine woman, that does not mean you are the worst person in the world. It doesn't mean that you're extremely undesirable or any of that, because quite the contrary, lack of feminine women, overly masculine women still have great traits. They still have great attributes. So for example, a lack of feminine woman may be a go-getter. She may be goal-oriented. She may be very responsible, very reliable. She may be very disciplined, right? A woman who operates from lack of feminine energy may be an activator, a facilitator. She gets things done. She makes things happen. She's self-sufficient. She's someone that you can go to help fix your problems. She's Superwoman. She wears that cape, right? And that's not always a good thing. We'll talk about that as well. But that doesn't mean that she has a whole bunch of horrible attributes. The reality of it is, in relationships, the lack of feminine woman does tend to clash with masculine men, because she brings a lot of the same traits into the relationship that he brings. And so in her mind, she's almost like, well, I know how to be a leader too. I know how to make decisions too. I know how to get things done too. I know how to teach. I know how to instruct. I know what I'm talking about. So why do I have to always listen to him? So that can cause her to give a lot of pushback. That can cause her to be argumentative. That can cause her to be combative. That can cause her to be defiant, right? If she feels like someone is challenging her, a lot of times she'll feel like, well, I can do what you can do because I have all of the same traits. So I'm going to compete with your masculinity. Sometimes that can cause her to be aggressive for no reason, or overly assertive, or feeling like she has to prove herself a lot, right? Oftentimes with the lack of feminine woman, she does tend to neglect the important aspects of self-care, as do many of the lower levels on the feminine hierarchy. But when it comes to the lack of feminine woman, a lot of times she does not rest, right? She doesn't give herself permission to just exist, to just be, because she has this sense of hyper independence. Oftentimes she is not very receptive. A lot of times, because she has this perfectionist mindset and the idea of all of her ducks not being in a row, it drives her crazy. And so sometimes she doesn't like to receive any type of feedback. She doesn't like the idea that she does anything wrong, right? She's often easily offended. Oftentimes she's very guarded, and so she isn't always as vulnerable or as expressive. A lot of times, if even outside of a relationship, let's say a friend comes to her for a listening ear, or emotional support, she's the type that will instead try to offer a solution, right? Or if she is in a relationship, let's say her man comes to her and he's like, well, this is something that you're doing that's bothering me. This is a problem for me. And instead of being compassionate or understanding, she'll either try to argue with him about it, or she'll be like, okay, well, what you want me to do? Like, look, what is the solution? What are we going to do about this? Like, she isn't really showing any type of empathy, right? So that's the lack of feminine woman. So again, oftentimes she does not give herself permission to rest. She doesn't really take care of herself as often as she could. She tends to distract herself with work. A lot of time, she's the type that likes to go, 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 do, give, fix everybody else's problems. So if this is you, in addition to giving yourself permission to rest, you want to A, fix your face. Because I don't know who you sitting over there frowning at, girl. You know, that is one of the things that the lack of feminine woman does. She usually walks around like this. She's just very tense in the face. The second thing you need to do is start slowing down. You don't need to rush all of the time. Why are you always rushing? It's just going to cause a lot of anxiety. It's going to cause you to not be as present in the moment. You're not going to be as attentive as you need to be when you're interacting with people, because your mind is there. Work on being more in your body. So you have to slow down some. If this is you, is black the only color that you wear? Or like, what are we going to Huey P. Newton this thing out every single day? You know, add a little bit of soft colors, add some pinks in there, add some lavender, some lilac, some yellow, some orange, something. If this is you, when is the last time you played? And I'm not talking about like playing with a child where you're like babysitting, where it's like an obligation, where it's like part of a schedule or routine. But I mean, when's the last time you played for you? Like you did something that you just enjoyed, where you just were carefree in the moment. If this is you, when was the last time you tried something for the first time? Meaning, when was the last time you were just spontaneous? It wasn't a structured routine where you just like, oh, this is what I'm doing at this time, this is what I'm doing at this time, where you just went out and you just did what felt good to you in the moment. When's the last time you did that? If this is you, how often do you socialize with and connect with other feminine women? Or do you try to bond with other feminine women at all? Are all of the women in your life just as busy and hardworking as you are? Or do you have anybody to help bring that balance? If this is you, you probably could stand to learn how to speak a little bit less. You know, you probably talk too much. It's okay. It's okay. I don't know if anyone in your life tells you that, if they are afraid to tell you. I'm not. You probably talk too much, and it's okay. It's okay to learn how to listen. It's okay to learn how to receive. It's okay to learn how to just take input as opposed to feeling like you have to give input. Feel like you have to be the first to give your opinion. I know you're opinionated. It's okay. That doesn't mean that you have to say everything that comes to mind, and it doesn't mean everyone wants to hear your thoughts. With the lack of feminine, really just work on adopting feminine habits, feminine hobbies, giving yourself permission to rest. Try to surround yourself with other feminine women. This doesn't mean that you suddenly have to stop being intelligent. It doesn't mean that you have to stop working on your aspirations and your goals. It doesn't mean that you suddenly become helpless and you can't do anything on your own. It just means that you're giving other people permission to do things for you. It means that when you go and you're invited to an event, you don't feel like you have to be a part of the cleanup crew or you have to be a part of the planning crew. You can just go and just be a guest. You can go and you can just exist, right? It means that if you are listening to someone, you don't have to try to solve their problem. You can just give them emotional support and just be a listening ear. It means you can take your cape off sometimes and feel good about it. It means that when family members call and they're like, hey, can I borrow this from you? And can you do this for me? And, you know, could you babysit and get, it's okay to say, no, actually I'm going to rest today, and do that without feeling guilty about it. You know, it's okay. Or no, I don't really have it. Or no, I don't feel comfortable giving this to you. It's okay to not allow yourself to be used just because you're reliable. It's okay, right? So it's really you being able to take care of yourself and then embracing your feminine energy. But that's enough for that one. That's lack of feminine. That is at the bottom. Really just working on embracing and embodying feminine energy and understanding that being masculine and manly is not the only way to gain respect, and it's not the only way to be successful in this world. Now, the next level of femininity is toxic femininity. Now, I hear people mention toxic femininity sometimes, but there's a lot that people leave out. So, hopefully you don't function from toxic femininity. Usually the type of women who do don't really like my content very much. However, realistically, many of us, including myself, have operated from a toxic feminine energy before, or sometimes still have a tendency to, depending on the situation or the circumstance. Now, take out your pen and pad. You want to write this part down. Toxic femininity encompasses all of the dark feminine traits, none of the light feminine traits. Now, I've actually done a video about this as well. Fresh recap. With dark femininity, you're going to think about that mysterious side of femininity. You're going to think about the sensual, the sexual side of femininity. You're going to think about using the power of the silence. So you're using eye contact. You're using your body language to speak for you, as opposed to being as communicative and expressive as light feminine, right? With the dark feminine energy, it's very persuasive. With the dark feminine energy, you're dealing in pleasure. You're dealing in desire and satisfaction, right? With dark femininity, you are dealing with the type of energy that makes man pursue you, right? Whereas with the light feminine, that's what makes a man want to commit to you, right? And we'll get into more of light feminine qualities in a bit. But with the dark feminine, it doesn't have a problem with setting boundaries. The dark feminine is very confident. The dark feminine understands the power of feminine energy. It understands the influence that feminine energy has. The dark feminine prioritizes self, whereas many of the light feminine traits have a lot to do with caring for the needs of others, nurturing others, being compassionate and empathetic towards others. That dark feminine is pouring into self and making sure you have what you need to feel good and fulfilled and confident and all of that, right? So toxic femininity has all of the dark feminine traits, none of the light. And they're using the dark feminine traits with ill intention, meaning they're using their sensuality. They're using what they understand about other people's desires, specifically man's desires, to be manipulative, to be sneaky and conniving, and to be very selfish. They're using it for their own personal gain. They weaponize femininity. Women who operate from toxic femininity, they weaponize femininity. With toxic femininity, you're not healing people. You're harming people intentionally, and you don't care. With toxic femininity, you're not inspiring growth or change in people. You're trying to manipulate situations in order to get people to do what you want them to do, even if they get the short end of the stick, and you know that's what's about to happen. With toxic femininity, you're doing things, again, for your own personal gain, for selfish reasons. However, you understand the power of it. And so that is why you continue to operate from that energy, because you know that it works. You know that you're going to get what you want, even if you are destroying people in the process. So I'm going to give a few examples of what this might look like, because this might confuse some of you. Let's say, for example, you are in a relationship and your man is trying to hold you accountable to something, right? And you know that he has a soft spot when you start crying. And you know that if you start crying and you're like, oh, well, I'm so horrible. I'm such a horrible person. And I don't deserve you. And I'm this. You know, if you start doing all of that, you start giving him that feminine energy. You're showing him that soft side. You're being gentle. You're being emotional. You're being sensitive. You know, the guards are down. You're being vulnerable. You're doing all of that, right? You know, if you do that, he's going to ease up on you a little bit, and then he's going to all of a sudden stop trying to hold you accountable, and instead he's going to be like, oh no, you're not bad, baby. You know, we all make mistakes, and I understand your past, and I understand your trauma, so I'm going to be patient with you when, and the next thing you know, like, you're no longer expected to hold yourself accountable. He's apologizing for his response to whatever you may have done to him, right? That is toxic femininity, right? I'll give you another example. Let's say that, again, let's say you're in a relationship. You do something to your partner. You hurt him in some type of way. You hurt his feelings in some type of way, right? You do something disrespectful or something disloyal. He gets upset and he's like, you know what? I'm done. We're over. And you're like, you sure? And he's like, yep, I'm done. This crossed the line. And in your mind, you're like, okay, well, I'm single now, right? So now I get to do what single people do. You don't take the time to reflect. You don't take the time to heal whatever part of you thought it was okay to do that to him in the first place. You don't take the time to sit and reflect on the effect you just had on this man's life, his sense of worth, his self-esteem. You have no real compassion or empathy towards him. You're not really doing anything to try to restore the peace. You're not really working on yourself. And that's the thing about toxic feminine energy. It focuses so much on the outer appearance. It focuses so much on the external. As long as everything looks good, as long as they have the beauty and the charm and the sensuality, they're like, well, I'm good. But on the inside, it's rotting. On the inside, it's destructive. On the inside, they're doing no work. And so again, you don't do anything to heal. You don't do anything to try to fix yourself. You don't do anything to try to elevate, to grow, to try to become a better person, just a decent human being. You just go on and jump on to the next situation. You're like, well, yeah, I hurt him, and I know that I hurt him. I disrespected him or whatever. I know that he's in a low place right now, but that's not my problem because I'm single now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my body or my good looks and my feminine energy, and I'm just going to go ahead and start a new situation with someone else, or I'm going to attract someone else, or I'm going to, right? And so now you have a situation where you brought someone else into it, knowing that he's probably going to come back, want the relationship again, but now it's like you are hurting someone else now, right? So now you're leaving a trail of hurt men, a trail of men who you've led on, right? So you are using your feminine energy to just hurt men. You're not taking care of yourself on the inside. You're not being nurturing to what's ever going on to them on the inside. You're just like, well, I look good. That's all that matter, right? That's another example of toxic feminine energy. Right? Toxic feminine energy doesn't always have to be just something that you do in relationships. It could look like you having relationships with women, but your relationship is based off of very unhealthy situations, meaning the only thing that the two of you do together is gossip, or the only thing that two of you do together is spread rumors. The only thing you do together is sit around and watch ratchet reality TV and laugh and joke about other people's pain. Like, that's toxic femininity, is when you bond over something that is unhealthy, right? You bond with women in a very toxic way. That's toxic femininity, right? So when you think about your interactions with other people or what you're using your feminine energy for, are you using it with ill intention? Are you hurting people in the process, and you know you're hurting people, but you're never pausing to show that you care? Are you the type where you're putting a lot of effort towards what you look like? You know, you got the body, you getting your hair and your nails done, you know how to do your makeup, and you got all of that down packed, you know, but when it comes to spiritual practices, when it comes to taking care of your mental state, nah. When it comes to your emotional well-being, you don't even know what that means, right? Are you taking care of what's inside? Are you taking care of your intrinsic qualities? If you were to strip all of this away, what beauty would you have left, right? If you can't answer that, you probably operate from a lot of toxic feminine energy. So if this applies to you, ask yourself, whatever traumatic experiences you've endured, have you really done the self-work to heal from it? Because oftentimes toxic feminine women feel justified in hurting people, specifically men, because somebody hurt them. and they feel like, well, you owe me this because of what that person did to me, right? Have you healed? Have you really done the self-work? Have you confronted whoever hurt you in the past? Do you journal? Do you meditate? Do you pray? Do you do visualizations, affirmations, any of that? If this applies to you, when is the last time you nurtured something or someone outside of yourself, meaning you really cared for the overall well-being of something or someone outside of yourself? You put effort into the growth of something or someone outside of yourself. How often do you do that? And I mean not doing it just because it's an obligation or responsibility, but because you have a desire to. If this applies to you, when was the last time you were vulnerable without playing the victim? If this applies to you, when's the last time you said, I'm sorry, or I apologize, without someone having to take an hour to explain to you what you did wrong? If this is you, are you really willing to sacrifice having someone in your corner that would love you and protect you and do almost anything for you? Are you willing to sacrifice that for the sake of attention and validation from outside sources? If this is you, have you ever kept someone in your life who you could not manipulate? Or do you have a way of self-sabotaging relationships when you realize you don't really have control over that person? If this is you, have you ever had a healthy relationship that wasn't full of drama and that wasn't on again, off again, on again, off again? Does the phrase be his peace upset you, irritate you, offend you, confuse you? If this is you, have you ever had relationships with other women where there wasn't some type of secret competition or some type of comparison going on instead of actually supporting each other for real? With toxic femininity, you usually lack feminine traits that are associated with the heart, like compassion and empathy, being sensitive to the emotional needs of others. So let's say someone is coming to you with a concern, or they're telling you this is something that you did that hurt me. You may all of a sudden again play the victim mode, or you may absolutely refuse to hold yourself accountable, and again put on these crocodile tears in order to dodge accountability or responsibility for your actions, right? Or you may completely shut down and just become passive aggressive or very sarcastic or very condescending because someone is trying to get you to hold yourself accountable to something that you did. So you're going to do whatever you can do to not show any type of love towards that person, meaning you're not showing any type of concern for whatever it is you may have put them through. So now, ladies, we are at the third level of femininity. This one I take very seriously. If you have not taken any notes thus far, I suggest you begin now. This level is the immature feminine level. This level has all of the light feminine traits, none of the dark feminine traits. So it is almost the complete opposite of toxic femininity. However, it does not make it good. And I'm going to explain to you what I mean by that. So, the immature feminine woman may be very gentle, very sweet and kind and caring. She may be very patient. The immature feminine woman may be very, very forgiving, very appreciative, very loyal, right? She's submissive, she's cooperative, she's agreeable, she's accommodating, right? She's all of these beautiful traits, right? However, she struggles with confidence because she lacks that dark feminine energy. She struggles with setting boundaries because she lacks that dark feminine energy. She does not recognize the power and the influence of her feminine energy because she lacks that dark femininity, right? The immature feminine woman, though very, very feminine, oftentimes she can be a doormat, a pushover, a people pleaser. She can come off as very desperate and needy, extremely clingy, overly sensitive, an extreme lack of emotional intelligence. The immature feminine woman is often loyal to a fault. She is the type of woman who will blame herself but forgive others and give chance after chance after chance because she tries to be so understanding. She may come off as the type of woman who will stay in a very unhealthy relationship because she's so desperate for a relationship, or she's so afraid of being single because she's like, well, I'm a woman, I must have a man to do something for me because I'm helpless and I can't do anything on my own. And this isn't to say there's anything wrong with wanting to have a man. There isn't anything wrong with wanting to need a man. There is something wrong when you feel like, oh, I can't function without a man. That is a problem. Because if you're in a relationship with a man, and let's say that he has to work, or he has to get things done, or he has to travel, or he has to focus, but he has to stop and micromanage everything you do because you can't think for yourself. You can't make decisions for yourself. And it's almost like he has another child to deal with, right? The immature feminine woman is often taken for granted and often taken advantage of. Many women today who are turned off by the idea of being feminine, they're turned off because when they think of what it means to be a feminine woman, they immediately think of immature femininity. And something that I see very often when it comes to immature femininity is that women who function from a lack of feminine energy at the bottom of the hierarchy, right? Women who operate from that, but they end up in relationships with masculine men who say, I need you to be feminine, or I demand respect, or you need to be submissive if you're with me, or anything like that. It doesn't mean a man is bad or horrible if he says anything like that. But lack of feminine women who end up with those men, a lot of times they end up jumping straight into immature femininity because they don't understand that there's power in femininity. They don't understand that there's power in submission. They don't get it. And so they automatically start lowering themselves and dimming their light and losing their individuality, and all of a sudden they just become this woman who just is always overly emotional. She's always feeling helpless. She's always so like, woe is me, I'm not good enough for him, nothing I do is right. And that is the immature feminine woman. That's immature feminine energy. When you feel helpless like that, and you're always walking around overly sensitive, and you're always like, oh, I'm just not good enough, that's immature femininity, baby. Because with mature and divine femininity, there's confidence, there's influence, there's power. You understand the power of your words, and you're not going to be walking around saying you're not good enough. That's an immature feminine thing, okay? Immature femininity, again, very selfless. So if you were to say to an immature feminine woman that you need to prioritize self-care, you need to take care of yourself a lot better, they'd probably say something along the lines of, that sounds selfish. They don't understand self-care because to them, they always feel like they have to care for everyone else. And what happens in relationships with the immature feminine woman is that they'll care for this person and they'll help this person and they'll do what makes this person happy, and they will try to make sure this person is fulfilled, and they'll try to cater to that person, and they're always pouring into others. So again, they have those nurturing light feminine qualities. However, because they're not pouring back into them, they're now wondering, well, why doesn't my man look at me the same? You know, he doesn't desire me anymore, or he's not as interested in me, or our conversations are now boring or bland. You can't understand why he isn't pursuing you the way he used to. Again, dark femininity is what makes a man pursue. Light feminine is what makes him commit. So he may commit to you and he may recognize, oh, she's going to be a great mother for my children. But in order to keep things interesting, exciting, in order to spice things up, in order to liven things up, in order to keep him pursuing you, in order to keep him guessing or whatever, in order for him to have an interest in the woman that you are or becoming, you have to still have that dark feminine energy. You have to embrace that side of yourself. And the thing about a lot with immature feminine women, many women are shamed of the dark feminine because they think it's evil or they think it's associated with something negative. A lot of times with the dark feminine, a lot of women have a lot of sexual shame. And so again, they're holding on to shame that does not belong to them. A lot of times with the dark feminine, a lot of women aren't confident in their bodies because again, they're not taking time for self-care because they're just prioritizing everything and everyone else. I see this is also very common for women who are housewives, right? Where they cook and they clean and they do everything for everyone else, but they're not taking care of themselves, and they feel kind of weak and pathetic in their relationships. They feel kind of helpless in their relationships. They don't feel like they have a voice in their relationships. And again, many women today are like, well, I don't want to be feminine because I know so many housewives who their man treat them like this and that. You know immature feminine woman. You don't know mature divine feminine woman, because that is not going to happen with us, you know. So that is immature femininity, and I really think it's important for us to understand this, because I do not advocate for women to operate from this energy at all. This is a level that really messes with our self-esteem as women. This is a level that builds a lot of resentment towards the idea of embracing femininity or embracing feminine roles. And I encourage feminine roles, so I definitely don't want women to have animosity towards being a feminine woman because this is what you think it means. It isn't, right? This is a woman who does not know her power. This is a woman who does not use her power. This is a woman who has been lied to about what it means to be a woman. Something else that I see a lot with women that operate from immature femininity, they're so afraid to communicate. So afraid, like, oh, I don't know how to say this because he might get mad. Okay. Okay. People get mad during communication all the time. As long as you're not being forceful or aggressive or rude or disrespectful, it's not up to you to not make him mad. He is in control of that, or he needs to learn how to practice self-discipline to be in control of that. You don't control his reactions or his responses. You are in control of how you present what it is you're saying. You're in control of that. Outside of that, okay, people get mad during communication sometimes. You get upset when people say things to you sometimes. It's okay. That's just how it works. But so many women that operate from immature feminine, like, oh, I don't know how to express, I don't want to say it because what if he gets upset? Okay, then he gets upset. I mean, you talk it out. That's what happens. This conflict resolution, or in conflict, people tend to get a little upset. It's okay. The point of communication isn't to not upset him. It is to be heard, to hear, to understand, to be understood, to reach a valuable solution that's advantageous to the collective, to be compassionate. It isn't to walk on eggshells. And that's the thing. The immature feminine woman is always walking on somebody's eggshells. She is easily intimidated and she feels like she must be very timid. And you don't. You don't always feel like you have to be overly accommodating. Like, you can express yourself freely as long as you're doing it in a feminine manner. You're fine, you know? So the thing with immature femininity, if this is you, confidence, honey. You want to work on your confidence. You have so many wonderful, beautiful qualities that so many men are dying for. There are men literally going overseas to find a woman who has those qualities, right? Here's the thing though. If you have those qualities hidden under insecurity, they will never find you, okay? If you have those qualities hidden under desperation, they will never find you, right? If you have those qualities hidden under being this helpless woman who just can't do anything. Again, there's nothing wrong with needing a man. I need mine, you know. However, I know if something happens to him, everything that he has built or worked for is not going to fall down because he has a woman who knows how to step up when necessary. I'm a compliment to him as well as a reflection of him, right? A good man is not going to want a woman that's beneath him. He's going to want a woman that brings balance to him. You are not inferior to man. And you can know the power of a woman without being a hardcore feminist, because that would never be me. I love my man, right? I understand that we balance each other. We need each other, right? But the whole immature feminine thing, that feeling weak, that feeling helpless, that being a pushover, that being a people pleaser, no. That's staying in a relationship that is extremely unhealthy due to desperation, that not setting boundaries or expressing yourself freely because you're afraid you're going to upset your man. That's nonsense. That is immature femininity, and that is not what we are. So we're going to grow out of that. Recognize the power that you have as a woman. Work on your confidence. Work on embracing that dark side. Okay, so we have finally gotten to mature divine feminine energy. If you watch my videos, whether I'm referring to masculinity or femininity, I often say mature and or divine, right? Very seldom do I ever just say divine. I'll either just say mature or I'll say mature and divine, right? Because realistically, many people do not reach that divine level until they're either much, much older, or they have put in a lot of work. They put a lot of time in healing, or they just been very protected, especially women. They've been very protected to the point where they don't really have to try. They don't have to think about it, right? So they've had the luxury of just being feminine for a very long time, right? So I'm going to start with mature femininity. However, you're going to notice they're pretty much the same until there's conflict. So with the mature feminine woman, right? The mature feminine woman is a woman who operates from feminine energy majority of the time. So she practices self-care. She has the feminine habits. She has the feminine hobbies. She usually has a feminine social circle or something like that. If not, she's usually working on building that feminine social circle, especially if she's just getting to that level. She's receptive. She's learning how to receive feedback. So she tends to be a woman who prides herself in being in her feminine energy. She knows how to be vulnerable and she expresses herself. She knows how to be communicative. She knows how to make time to just play and laugh and enjoy life as opposed to just surviving it all of the time, right? The issue with the mature feminine woman is that when she is triggered, or when she feels disrespected, or when she feels like she has to operate from survival mode, she takes a masculine approach, right? So she has an abundance of feminine energy, and she handles most situations in a very feminine manner. Like you would imagine, she's a very feminine woman. However, she has not yet been able to master herself enough to remain feminine during moments of conflict. And so if she feels like someone is disrespecting her, she may feel like, well, I have enough masculine energy in me to show you not to mess with me, as opposed to taking a divine feminine approach, which I'll explain what that might look like in a second. So let's say that you're having a conversation with your man. You're trying to communicate with him, and he says something and you feel attacked by it, right? The mature feminine woman may do her best to remain feminine and try to explain why she feels attacked, right? She may try to explain in a very gentle, loving, feminine manner, well, I don't think that you should say this, or you're being very aggressive towards me, or I don't think that you need to yell at me. But if he dismisses that, like if he just kind of shuns that, and he's like, oh, well, you're paying attention to my delivery as opposed to paying attention to what I say, the femininity would just kind of go out the window. Sorry, I got the window open, so it's like loud and stuff, but the femininity would just go out the window. And she's like, okay, I tried it, so okay, you want to be dismissive to me, you want to be rude to me, you want to be disrespectful as I'm trying to be feminine, then okay, here we go, right? And so she'll either compete with it or she'll just go really cold, right? So that would be the mature feminine, meaning she does her absolute best. She does her absolute best. She is operating from feminine most of the time. Again, she has the feminine routine. She has adopted a feminine lifestyle. She is doing her best to remain in her feminine and to walk in that feminine light. However, if she feels like she is being taken advantage of because of that, if she feels like somebody's trying to run over her because of that, if she feels like somebody is trying to silence her because of that, then a lot of times she will take a masculine approach and will let them know, like, yes, I'm feminine, but I'm still masculine enough to defend myself. Or I still have enough masculinity in me to protect myself. Or enough masculinity in me to show you that I am not the one. I don't have a problem with setting you straight or blah, 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 right? That would be the mature feminine woman. Now, a divine feminine approach, right? Divine femininity has all of these other great qualities that all of the other levels have, right? So when you think about the lack of feminine woman, right? The lack of feminine woman is a leader in her own way, right? She's very responsible, very disciplined and reliable and all of that stuff, right? The divine feminine woman is also very influential. So she's also sort of a leader, right? The divine feminine woman, she can be self-sufficient like the lack of feminine woman. However, she's usually just a lot more prosperous. So she usually doesn't have to work as hard. And she's also a lot more favorable, meaning people naturally want to give to her and do things for her. So she doesn't have to burn up a lot of energy herself. So she tends to be highly favored, and she recognizes her worth, and she realizes that she deserves whatever favors people are giving her. Right? Whereas the lack of feminine feels like I gotta do it all on my own and I can't rely on nobody but me, right? When you think about the toxic feminine, and I don't believe that I mentioned any positive traits of the toxic feminine, but like the toxic feminine, the divine feminine woman embraces her sensuality and her sexuality. She also is selective, and she understands that she is only going to give her body to someone that is worthy of it. A man has to deserve her energy. She values the sacred connection between man and woman, and not just any and every man can experience her. Like, you have to meet her on her level. You want this divine feminine woman, you have to be a divine masculine man. And also, like the toxic feminine woman, she will put effort towards her physical appearance. However, she puts more effort towards her physical health, because she understands that what happens on the outside is going to start with whatever you're putting on the inside. Divine feminine women have healthy lifestyles. They care about healing from the inside, not just the emotional, mental space, but physically as well. So much of her beauty comes from taking care of herself physically, right? But not only does she take care of her physical health, but then she also heals herself in the other ways, like I just mentioned. So she makes sure that she does things that are going to allow her to express herself effectively. She does things where she's identifying her emotions, she's understanding her emotions, and this helps her to understand others. It helps her to be more compassionate, right? So she has the positive qualities of the toxic feminine woman. However, she doesn't use it with ill intention or anything like that. The divine feminine woman may have that sweetness and that kindness and that gentleness like the immature feminine woman does. However, she knows how to communicate boundaries effectively, right? She's going to be the type of woman that's like, okay, well, I understand that this is maybe what you're used to. I'm not okay with this happening to me. Or this is not something that I accept, or this is not something that I want to allow in my life. Like, she's okay with setting boundaries. Like the immature feminine woman, she may be very nurturing and she pours into others. At the same time, she prioritizes herself. She makes sure she has what she needs. She's self-fulfilled, and she has all of the amazing qualities that the mature feminine woman does. However, she does not handle conflict the same way. It's either you're going to respect her or you're going to lose access to her. She is going to use the power of her silence. The power of silence, that is a dark feminine thing, right? Where you're using your body language, you're using your eye contact, you're using your energy to speak for you. Where again, the light feminine is a lot more communicative and a lot more expressive, right? So she can do both. She knows when to give her energy to the conversation and when to just fall back and let it go and just to go silent, right? And also, because she's so compassionate, she has a way of being very understanding. So if someone is coming at her wrong, she doesn't automatically feel like, oh, I need to defend myself or check this person. A lot of times she'll try to understand why this person is the way that they are. And sometimes she'll realize, you know, you're not being this way because of me. It's not me. I'm not going to take this personally. You're this way because of you, because of what you've gone through. She tries to understand. That's where a lot of that empathy comes from. So the divine feminine woman is a woman who has mastered herself. She has learned how to have a healthy balance of both light and dark feminine energy. And that is what divine feminine energy is. When you get to the point where someone triggers you, but you have control over how you respond, how you choose to react, you're able to pause, you're able to process, you're able to reflect, and you're able to give an appropriate response. You're able to give wisdom, you're able to give patience, you're able to give others grace. You've reached a divine feminine level. When you've gotten to the point where you're able to surrender the need to be in control, something that the lack of feminine woman struggles with, but the immature feminine woman immediately surrenders, right? But when you're able to surrender control as a voluntary act, not because you feel weak, but because you understand, I want to release what doesn't serve me, or I'm not going to force anything. I'm not going to give any extra energy to this situation. I'm going to trust. I'm going to have faith. You reach a divine feminine level. And that's another thing about the divine feminine woman. You must have some type of spiritual practice. I don't care who or what you believe in. If you think you're going to be a divine feminine woman and you don't have any type of faith, you don't believe that there is anything or anyone covering you at all, you're not in tune with anything outside of just what you see, you're going to struggle with divine femininity. You're going to struggle with that a lot. When you're your divine feminine, you know how to attract things to you that you want. And I know this is foreign language to some people, and I don't like to go around saying the word manifest because I get tired of hearing that. But you understand how to attract to you things. You understand how to bring things into fruition, right? You understand the power of your thoughts, the power of your words. And I myself am not yet at the divine feminine level that I would like to be. And I know I won't be until I no longer have the unhealthy thoughts. I've gotten to the point where I no longer say the things that I think that are unhealthy or that are harmful, right? Because I have always been known as the bluntly honest person, the person that's cutthroat, the person with no filter, the person that's going to say what a person needs to hear even if they don't want to hear it, despite how I know they're going to feel about it. That has always been me. I am now at a point where I know not to say anything. I use my words to inspire, to instruct, to teach, to guide, to be influential, to be helpful, to be encouraging, or to be curious and inquisitive when I want to learn. I know how to use my words for good things now. However, when it gets to the point where I automatically think of something positive as opposed to when someone says something negative to me, I automatically think of what I could say that would make them feel this small. Like I immediately think of what I can say that would hurt them, right? I want to get to the point where the first thing that comes to my mind is something loving, something caring, something patient, something kind. You know, that would be the divine feminine. And again, so many women don't get to that point until they're so much older, or until they've done a lot of healing work, or again, the women who have had the luxury of being feminine for majority of their lives, they've been covered for majority of their lives, you know. That hasn't been the case for all of us. It definitely wasn't the case for me. I didn't have the luxury of being feminine all of my life, you know. And so, yeah, I'm a work in progress. And some women, and the reason why I say mature and divine is because some women do not necessarily want to be divine feminine women. Some women are perfectly okay with handling things in a masculine approach, right? But you got to ask yourself, if that is you, the mature feminine woman, which many of us are, if that is you, are you really attacked? Like, is someone really attacking you because they say something you don't like? Do you really expect people to walk on eggshells because of your triggers? That's your responsibility to handle that. That is no one else's responsibility, right? You have to be in control, and you have to be disciplined enough and have enough power over yourself to say, yes, someone says something I didn't like, but I am going to choose what I'm going to do in response to this, or how I'm going to respond to this. I'm not going to allow myself to be negatively influenced or impacted by that person's negative energy, right? The mature feminine woman has to learn how to have that type of power over herself, because if not, you're always going to fall back into that masculine energy when you feel like you have to be in that mode, when you really don't have to be in that mode. Like, it really isn't necessary. It's going to drain you, right? And again, sometimes you may feel justified for it, but I just think that you should just consider it. Like, is it really necessary? So those are the 5 levels of femininity. You have the lack of feminine, toxic feminine, immature feminine, mature feminine, divine feminine. And again, divine feminine is really just a healthy balance of light and dark feminine energy, whereas mature femininity is going to be an abundance of femininity, whether light or dark, but it's still that masculine presence there that comes out unnecessarily. Sometimes that's going to be that. And with the divine feminine, she has the ability to tap into that masculine side as well if necessary. Realistically though, divine feminine women seldom are ever in situations where they need to be masculine. Very seldom does that ever happen, because they're usually highly favored and they're protected, they're covered. You know, people are always making sure that they are okay, that they have what they need, that they're safe and secure. And so again, like, they usually don't have those problems. So I do hope that this was informative in some way. I hope you're able to use this information to help you realize which situations bring out which levels from you, and then try to make some type of goal to operate from mature or divine feminine energy majority of the time. Peace and much love, ladies.